Over the years, the idea of crying at a game has changed immensely. Hell, the idea of me, a dude, being able to cry at anything has also been massively inverted too. Big boys don't cry? Well, that certainly never applied to me. Whilst I bawled as a child back when all we had were clumps of voxels not moving anymore like in Final Fantasy VII, gaming has come a long way when it comes to conveying human emotion. Personally, I still often find that text boxes, simple animation and voiceless delivery are more powerful thanks to your mind conveying a level of perfect voice acting and intonation that you can't get with an actual performance. But of course there are things like The Last of Us and Gone Home as well. Since motion capture and the cinematic craft of cutscenes have gone on to gain more respect across the board, gaming's finest moments can routinely provoke emotional responses in the same way that film and TV have done for decades. That should all be championed as progress for the medium. And in gaming's case, with you behind the controls, chances are you're always pretty aware that something really emotional is right around the corner. I'm Scott from WhatCulture.com, and these are 9 video game moments where you knew you were going to cry. Also note there are massive spoilers within, check the description for specific details. Number 9, Reaching the Top, Celeste. A game about someone climbing a mountain. It should be simple enough, right? In theory, sure, but Celeste is one giant metaphor for overcoming negative headspaces, about steering your way through that dark cloud of doubt and worry and emerging stronger on the other side. It directly ties these struggles to gameplay mechanics and storylines too, manifesting negative thoughts directly into main character Madeline's anonymous shadow self. Madeline is scared of this individual, she runs from it, is taunted by it and treats it as an other for a good portion of the story. However, once she realizes this entity is something to be embraced, to allow worry and doubt as human feelings and to connect, she emerges altogether more capable, and can climb the final stretch of the mountain faster than ever. This final rush of the game, putting everything you've learned and understood into one glorious platforming gauntlet of precise animations, is one of the finest moments of the generation. By the time I hit the top of the mountain in the game, and honestly internally, given how much Celeste has helped with framing all of these emotions, I was in bits. Number 8, Sergeant Jackson's death, Call of Duty 4. Now, you wouldn't think Call of Duty could deliver a tearjerker, but that's precisely why it works so well. Going into the game, we didn't expect such a raw emotional response, but as the mission, shock and awe played out, you likely only welled up more and more, realizing that Sergeant Jackson wasn't going to make it out alive. During shock and awe, you take control of US Marine Sergeant Paul Jackson, after the helicopter that you were in gets engulfed in a shocking nuclear explosion. The visual alone and reality setting in that this is happening is one thing, but what makes the scene so dark is that you then survive the crash, long enough to see the bodies of former colleagues before Jackson himself finally succumbs to his own injuries. We then zoom out to an overhead monitor replicating that of a mission readout back at base, and Jackson's status changes to KIA. Even if you didn't tear up, this moment was instrumental in proving how much a video game could use active participation in a story to really make a moment hit home. Number 7, James's final sacrifice, Fallout 3. Much of Fallout 3's storyline can be summarized into the player searching an irradiated wasteland in pursuit of their father, James. During the earliest glimpses of gameplay, it's revealed that the player's mother had died during childbirth, and that Liam Neeson's James had been forced to raise you by himself. However, after the player turns 18, James seemingly decides that his work is done and escapes the vault that you're in an attempt to use his wider scientific talents to improve the outside world. This spurs you and the main thrust of the game into action, as you finally reunite with James and learn that he's working on Project Purity, a way to restore drinking water to the wasteland. While James's intentions are good, he has a habit of getting caught in sticky situations. So while it's not massively surprising, James still has to make the ultimate sacrifice to ensure that Project Purity doesn't fall into the hands of the nefarious Enclave, losing his own life in the process. Number 6, Arthur Morgan's worsening health, Red Dead Redemption 2. There's something about the lumbering nature of Red Dead Redemption 2 that makes it feel like you're watching distant footage of a mountainside collapsing, or something like Akira Kurosawa's epic dissection of a warlord slowly losing his sanity in 1985's Ran. Yes, I have been watching samurai movies, Ghost of Tsushima is just on the horizon while I record this. Red Dead 2 is huge, it's deliberately slow and weighty. Whilst we all knew something had to happen to Arthur as he wasn't mentioned in the original game, when he semi-randomly gets diagnosed with tuberculosis, it's then on you how he really takes it. You can go out guns blazing if you want, but the game will serve up an ending that sees Micah put you down like a rabid dog. It's certainly the way that thousands of cowboys went out, but if you choose to take this moment as a pivot into a more titular sense of redemption, you'll get an altogether more peaceful finale. Though Arthur knows that he won't make it, his closing actions revolve around letting John Marsden go free away from Dutch. He then duels with Micah, and even he then leaves as well, but Arthur's closing time on this earth is finally spent watching the sunrise, knowing he did what he could with the time afforded. Number 5. The Photo. The Last of Us. We've covered The Last of Us to death at this point, and the most immediate scene that gut punches most people out the gate involves the death of Joel's daughter Sarah in the opening. However, something else that I want to spotlight, because I've also mentioned Joel and Ellie's exchange at the cabin in my Games That Deserve Oscars video, is when Ellie reveals that she's kept a photo of Sarah for most of the pair's time together, eventually returning it to Joel while they explore a university. It's such a powerful, understated moment. Firstly, because you have to choose to accept the photo by actively pushing triangle. Second, because Troy Baker's acting conveys Joel choking back a huge mix of emotions in this moment, and third, because of all the baggage associated with those other two scenes that I mentioned, alongside the wider context of the journey so far. At this point in the story, both protagonists have almost died protecting each other. Joel has very much accepted Ellie as his quote-unquote new daughter, and after going through so much death and loss, you can tell both sides have a whole new perspective on their codependent relationship. For Joel to finally be comfortable discussing his real daughter with Ellie, and for her to pick this moment to return the photo of Sarah that Joel discarded when Tommy tried to do the same earlier on, speaks volumes as to the growth of both characters. Number 4. Aerith's death. Final Fantasy VII. You might think that this came out of nowhere looking back, and it's certainly regarded as a hugely shocking moment if you played Final Fantasy VII as a child, but back in the 90s, Square Enix led FF7's marketing with the death of Aerith. It was referred to as a love that can never be in TV adverts, and a screenshot even sat on the back of the box at retail. Maybe it won't be that bad, you'd think, assuming that there's some way to bring her back. Even if you play today, you likely think a few clumps of voxels won't get you. Then you hear that piece of music. Nobuo Uematsu's gorgeous 3-note melody that opens Aerith's theme makes me melt every single time. And I know that's all it takes for millions of others to get all weepy too, whether they've played the game or not. In-game control is taken completely away from you. Yes, Sephiroth's stabbing comes out of nowhere, but it's this piece of music that gently rolls in underneath the visuals that makes everything land. We see the party say goodbye one by one, before Cloud lays Aerith to rest outside the Forgotten City, where she slowly sinks into the water. It's this bit that even if you knew it was coming, will always hit like nothing else. Number 3. Attempting to change the past. Last Day of June. Though the sadness-evoking moments in some of these games come right out of left field, it's pretty clear from the outset of Last Day of June that players are in for a real tearjerker. The game centers on the story of a couple named Carl and June, who are involved in a car accident that leaves the former wheelchair-bound, alongside taking the life of June and their unborn child. Carl then acquires the ability to embark on a series of journeys through the memories of other people who were present at the crash itself, as he tries to change the events of that day, hoping to prevent June's death. The game explores a butterfly effect concept, with the player attempting to alter the ultimate fate of their spouse, with the final change being the culmination of all your efforts. This Groundhog Day-esque experience ultimately makes sadness inevitable, but these final scenes deserve to be seen by way more people, as Last Day of June is notably overlooked. Number 2. Gregory's Story. What Remains of Edith Finch. Initially appearing to be another walking sim with plenty of whimsy by way of the Finch's towering family home, this almost Roald Dahl looking faux fairy tale becomes one of the most emotional experiences in recent memory the further you progress. The game is awash with detail as you control Edith Finch, returning home to find out what happened to her various relatives, all of which died in mysterious circumstances, and all of whom spent some time in this ginormous house. You do this through a series of interconnected stories and vignettes that all share a common dark and sometimes seriously depressing tone. Though the overall takeaway is that you should cherish life while you can, as who knows what might be around the corner, once you're living the final moments of infant Gregory's life as he apparently drowned while happily playing in a bathtub, it can be horrifically grim. Why these tragic circumstances befell this family is ultimately open to interpretation, but it's scenes like this that force you to grapple with mortality itself. And number 1, That Dragon Cancer. While much of the emotional content in games is always fictional, developers and parents Ryan and Amy Green should be commended for showing an unbelievable amount of collective strength, channeling the anguish of losing their son Joel into the interactive experience that is that dragon cancer. Playing as a series of interactions from Joel's perspective, alongside detached representations of thought processes or real-life conversations the pair had to have with various doctors, this autobiographical approach holds nothing back. Knowing the real-life implications of the events portrayed only makes them that much more emotional. And again, I can only commend the idea of steering into life's hardships, molding them, grounding them, and sharing them so everyone can try to grow together. Heartbreaking and devastating, but human and essential. That Dragon Cancer is a phenomenal piece of work. And those are just my selections of various games where you knew you were going to cry. Let me know your favourites down in the comments, and please listen to the WhatCulture Gaming Podcast over on Spotify, Acast, Podbean, or whatever else you can think of. For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com, and I'll catch you soon.